Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our third masterclass or fourth masterclass of the series. And I'm really, really excited about this masterclass because playlisting is so topical at Unheard. So many artists come to Unheard to run playlisting campaigns. We all obviously do a lot more than that, but playlisting is so topical and actually really important for independent artists who are looking to go, from the likes of 0 streams to 10 streams to 100 streams, 1,000 streams, just get that momentum going. And this webinar, we will cover some tips and tricks on how to work with independent curators, how to share your music properly with independent curators, and you'll discover some strategies around that within this webinar. How playlisting will fit into your overarching marketing campaign to make sure that you're not over-indexing in playlisting and relying too much on it, but you're utilizing it enough. And then also new trends and what the future of playlisting looks like. And I'm really, really excited to have with us a very special guest, Nasco from StereoFox. And Nasco, I'll hand over to you in a second, but from my perspective, StereoFox and yourself have become kind of a pinnacle when it comes to independent playlisting, sharing your thoughts on music via your blog, and it's really challenging to create a well-respected, high-quality, network of influential, either your publication or the playlist that you create. But you guys have managed to do that, and that's always amazed me. And credit to the work that you've done. So, Nasco, could you give a quick introduction to yourself before we dive in?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here as well. We've known each other for what, like a couple of years already. We did
Yes.
a podcast together, so that was really exciting. So yeah, thanks for the kind words. We try, we do our best. So yeah, a quick intro for anyone that doesn't know what StereoFox is. It started as a music blog back in 2012, so we're 12 years old now. Basically as a group of friends who wanted to share about the new music that they found. It was very random in the beginning, genre rise. I joined 2017, right on the verge of Spotify becoming a huge thing. We started with the playlisting back then, probably 2017, the middle of 2018. And yeah, at the beginning I just started basically helping out, just writing about the music I love. But then things evolved so much. Spotify grew, StereoFox grew as the blog, and also 2019 we started the label StereoFox Records. Just some test releases that turned out really well. Pandemic, unfortunately for a lot of people, was bad. For us was really good because people spent a lot of time online. So we did a lot of releases 2020, and yeah, here we are. We have 1,200 tracks or more released. We have a few playlists. Everything's like the blog is going strong. So yeah, we're lucky to have a job that we love and to be in this super exciting music industry.
I love that. Thanks, Nasco. And I mean, wow, I didn't know you guys were going for 12 years. Before we dive into some of the questions that would really support artists, can you just explain, from your opinion, how you think the playlisting landscape has changed over the last 12 years? I'm really interested to see if you have any insight on that.
So Spotify launched in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, or at least in the major places, like the majority of the places. So I think user playlisting, I might be wrong, sorry about that. I think it launched a couple of years later, or at least we launched in 2017, if I'm not wrong, on our own playlist. So basically start developing them. It's changed a lot, honestly. You remember YouTube was a huge thing. It still is, but it was so big back in the days. And like a lot of people made most of their royalties from YouTube mixes. I'm talking about a lot about lo-fi, just as a piece of context, genre-wise, for our audience. So StereoFox has been very focused on chill hop. Like, we're one of the early adopters of the genre. We've been around before chill hop records, for example, the pioneers basically, or chill cow. We were around that time, so we've been following the scene a lot before we were even a label. And so basically, the whole thing with chill hop, we've been there from the beginning. So I can talk a bit more about the development of the genre and the playlist. But we also do R&B, hip hop. We do electronica, true electronica, the kind of like Bonobo, ILO frameworks, that kind of thing. We also do a little bit of indie here and there.
Mhm.
What else? Future beats. We love future beats, especially the
Mhm.
Sanglar era. And yeah, like we're not too broad, but we're also not too niche. So there's kind of a mix in between. So to answer your question, playlisting has changed in terms of a lot of people hopped on the train, which basically makes things very, very difficult for you to stand out as a playlist curator. You have to do a lot of ads. You have to be very interesting on social media in order to push your playlists. You have to be sort of niche as well. I think that's important because generic playlists don't work anymore, or there are players who are just too good at it. Some people are still going strong as creators, and like they're huge accounts, massive accounts that are not going anywhere, basically. So, in terms of that, yeah, it's just a very saturated, which combined with the editorial change in Spotify, basically, as you guys know, there's been of editorial staff cuts. There's been a lot of automation, basically algorithmic and personalized playlists, or like somewhere in between that are algotorial, what they call.
Yeah.
So it's a whole other topic, I would say. But yeah, that's in the gist, basically.
Thank you so much. That's really, really interesting to hear about the work that playlist creators have to do to maintain, a high quality and not just high quality, but a playlist that is going to drive consumption. Never mind it just featuring great tags. And I think that's quite a nice segue into something I wanted to ask you, which was, if I'm an artist and I'm pitching to playlists, there are so many options out there. There are so many playlists, millions of them, tens of millions of them. What are the things that I should look out for as an artist to stay away from those playlists or playlist curators that are not legitimate and are not going to drive, genuine streams from fans?
So in general, just to make this note at the beginning, playlisting should not be the only thing you should aim for. Basically, the best thing is a combination of everything. Organic is the best, but in order for you to create some fans, you have to be on some playlists. In order for you to also trigger algorithmic on Spotify, you have to be on some playlists. This is proven to work. If you've been listened to a lot, you usually trigger algorithms. So playlisting should be part of your strategy, but not the only strategy. We've been talking with so many people about that. Just definitely remember that. So for you to first thing I would that comes to mind is definitely look for playlist title and mood. So it should match your music ideally. So it either genre based or mood based. It can be both. So it can be true hip hop. You should not submit trap to it, or like intense trap. Or like very raw, high speed, drill or whatever. Just make sure this fits. There's a match. It's like on Tinder. you should find something that works for both sides. I'm also what I always look at is the types of artists that are on the playlist. So if you see an indie artist, like indie folk artist on a hip hop playlist, it's not doing good it's not doing any good for you. You're just gonna end up in a similar artist with some random, or it can be famous, but whatever indie folk a guy. It's not gonna do anything for you. It's not gonna drive any fans to you. The other thing I look into is basically there's a handy little trick. So you go into the playlist, you see, okay, it has 1 million followers, right? You go into, so what I would do is I would go in the first, maybe, I don't know, first 10 artists. I just click on them. I scroll down. And if they're smaller, I advise for you to aim for smaller acts, because you can then see that you scroll down, you go onto the discovered on section. Does this playlist appear there? Because very often it's not. So how the discovered on section works is basically it shows the top performing, top bringing in terms of number of streams playlist on top. So basically the one that's first on discovered on is the one that brings most streams. That's how Spotify works. It's not a myth. It's absolute logic. So definitely go there. And if you, for example, see this set playlist with 1 million followers. If you see it on number 10 and then number 9, you have a playlist with 10K followers. It means the 10K follower playlist makes more streams. Of course, it depends on the position the track is, but basically, it's a logic. So this is a kind of red flag. It means it's either an old playlist inactive, or it's just not, people just don't use it, or it's not doing good. Maybe there's high skip rate, which is also something to be mindful of. It's not doing good for your music. So skip rate is not good. If you have a high skip rate, it's not gonna trigger algorithm playlist, because Spotify thinks, okay, people don't like this song, I'm not gonna push it more. So I don't know if we're talking about botted playlists here.
Well, we should touch on that too, probably. I think what I want to try and do for the artists on the call is to give them, all of the things to be looking out for. And I think you shared some great tips there to make sure that artists are looking for active playlists. I think that's a great tip that you gave around going to Discovered On. But also, like you said, they're botted playlists too, because artists need to stay away from those as well.
Yeah. So botted playlists are a huge problem nowadays. So a few ways you can find that is basically if, again, generic title, generic artist, maybe some of the artists don't have even name, not names, but like artworks or like social media, whatever. Also, there's some sudden spikes. If you land on such a playlist and you see sudden spikes, like you go from 100 to 1,000, just for the example's sake, it's probably problematic. And if you go on Spotify for artists, if you go into your song, you can see the number of listeners as opposed to the number of streams. So I've seen this. Unfortunately, some of our releases have landed, because this is a strategy some botted playlists do. So they add the song, you see a spike, you see, okay, this playlist is doing really well, so I'm just going to message them. They're going to tell me, okay, give me $100 and I'll put your playlist. But then you go and see, for example, like 30 listeners and 1,000 streams. And also, you see there are some cities and countries that have been known for having a lot of farms, I think. So Helsinki is one of them that comes to mind. I think Sao Paulo, if I'm not mistaken. And if you see very random and a huge number that's against one city, it's a red flag. So
we used to see Buffalo a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one, yeah. So yeah, guys, honestly, just don't do bots. Spotify is penalizing you and the distributor, and it can basically, the least that can happen is basically just take off your streams, but they can also take out your song. They can penalize you. You can be, banned to upload new stuff. I mean, it's endless, and Spotify is really doing a lot to stop that, because it's basically, just grabbing from their pot, which is, I mean, as a business, it's normal, but it's stupid, because it's just not doing any good. And they don't want to pay you money that's not real, or it's just like machine induced. It's not the real listeners. So basically, it's not doing good to anyone. You're not going to make any money or much money with that. So I'll definitely stay away from that.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of things, Nasco, as well, which I think are just worth talking about very quickly, is that playlisting, although important, shouldn't be all of your focus. We all often talk about it being between 10 and 20% of your focus. And the other things can be on your content strategy, and the other things can be on collaboration or advertising, whatever it might be. But I think it's important for artists to think that way when they are thinking about releasing, rather than I'm just going to pitch to a few playlists and that's going to be fine. So I think that's a really important point that you mentioned. And something I wanted to ask you as well is, there's a lot of things to look out for there that you mentioned around not great playlists. Are there any tools that would help artists find the right types of playlists, or check whether they are, botted or illegitimate?
Obviously, I heard is a great place to find playlists. There are some other places as well. There's a two, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Is It a Good Playlist? Which is on, I haven't, to be fair, I haven't used it much, but I see it's good. There's basic, like Chartmetric is a good place. Spotify for Artists is a good place. Just go and look at data. If there's something that looks wrong, which I realize that a lot of people might not know what's wrong and what's right at some point. But if you see any like huge fluctuations, this is a really like should be a red flag. Just better stay away from that. And if people ask you to pay for playlisting, it might be genuine. They might have a real thing going, but you never know that. So it's a huge risk, which obviously it's not advised to take. I get you might get a few followers, you might get a few streams. It's usually very expensive and it's risky. So why do that? Like the best thing to do is basically, aim for like submit music to curators, pay for their time. Honestly, like I'm the person overseeing the submission process at Stereofox, and I can guarantee we listen to every single thing. We listen carefully. We try to 2-3 minutes. Of course, if the song allows it, and basically you can tell from the first minute. You can tell if the song is right for us. But I try to listen anyway, and like provide some feedback, provide some insight on the artist, because the whole idea is to help the artist grow, right? And we really pay attention. That's the thing, and you really pay for the person's time. You're not paying to be playlisted. And another thing I wanted to tell you, and like really genuinely, we try to support everything we can. Like whenever we not support, it's not because I'm in a bad mood or I just don't want to. It's just that there are various reasons why something doesn't work or we cannot support it, which unfortunately means that the artists have spent money for not receiving support, but it's just like a few pounds, but hopefully you get valuable feedback, and you can learn and you can grow the next time you do it. So
really cool, Nasco. And I must admit, like, it's incredible to hear you talking about the care and diligence you put into listening to music. I think that's awesome. One thing I wanted to say is, what if we're thinking about our community and our artists who would want to pitch to you, is what grabs your attention with a song? Is there anything in particular you look for that then allows you to make a positive decision to say, do you know what, we are going to place this because it has X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. So first thing, guys, I cannot stress this enough. The music has to be good. That's your job. And I don't mean to be harsh. It's just, this is something you have to do on yourself. You have to make sure the music is top quality. Of course, everyone learns, everyone makes mistakes, everyone gets better. But if you get some things right, for example, you have good songwriting, good melody, good mix, good master, it shouldn't be perfect, It shouldn't be like Beyonce level or any like star. It has to be just good enough. We have supported and playlisted, we supported on the blog, and playlisted a lot of bedroom producers, bedroom singers. And it's not that they like their music is just good. So I think that's the most important thing. I would suggest when you do your songs, just play the demos to your friends, play it to someone else that works in music. Just consider all these things before releasing, because releasing means that the music is 100% ready. Obviously, every artist has music in the past that's not probably good enough for them anymore, like a few years ahead. But I think it has to be on a certain level. And unfortunately, we just cannot playlist music that has been recorded badly, or it has zero mix, or it hasn't been mastered, or just like, I'm sorry to say that, but some people's skills are not up to the level where they can be to like next to artists that are super talented. And what we're trying to do in this super saturated environment with music is to push good music, right? That's why we're called curators, like not us, but all of the people who do that. You're called curators. You have to present the good creme de la creme, and then if you come with an average song and like it's just not good, it's just not well done, you haven't put the time and the effort into it, well, unfortunately, there's nothing much we can do, because we are just, we're not doing this for the listeners. We're just like, yeah. So
yeah. Sorry, go on. Carry on.
Another thing I wanted to mention, which is not as important, but it still makes an impression, is artwork. So if you can just try to have decent artwork, again, shouldn't be professional, shouldn't be like, you shouldn't have, honestly, you shouldn't need to spend too much on recording, mixing, mastering, etc. on your first song. It has to be decent, just look what other people do, just learn. I think there's, like, even on Fiverr, you can get your mixed and master song for like £50, I guess. And that's good enough, You can get an artwork for £10. It's good enough. So just, or your friends, you do experiment. Our phones take very good pictures. So
yeah. I love that, and that's going. I think this really resonates with me, because we get lots of artists pitching to playlists via the Unheard app, and of course we don't guarantee placement, because that's not what a legitimate company does. But we push for feedback. We always get you feedback as an artist. But one of the biggest challenges is that artists, like you said, they haven't mixed their track, they haven't mastered it, they haven't got good artwork, they haven't shown their friends their track to get some feedback. And so actually, it's a challenge to get that playlisted, because it's not quite ready to yet. That doesn't mean to say that it can't be ready to, and artists can get their song ready, but it's just not ready yet. And I think that's something that we experience firsthand, as well. So I think those are great tips to push to an artist, to say, get your track mixed, get it mastered, make sure you've got good artwork, and play it to your friends. Play it to people that will give you honest feedback. I love that. One question I had is, we get a lot of artists who are sitting within a niche genre, so maybe they're not sitting in hip hop, maybe they're sitting in, I won't try and name one, but a niche genre. How can you kind of help artists, or what's the best way for those artists to find playlists if they do sit in a very small niche that isn't one which has, a lot of playlists within it?
Yeah, not gonna lie, it's hard. We have a experimental jazz electronic artist that we're releasing with. He's absolutely genius, but it's so hard to find playlists for his music. What I would try to do is find similar genres, or like people that come close to it. For example, he sounds very much like The Comet is Coming, or Flying Lotus kind of thing. So you go there, you see where these artists are. This is the same tip I gave for Discovered On actually works for similar artists. Then you see where they have been found. So you kind of get an idea of where they are positioned, with what places they fit. For example, just out of my head, this music can work for gaming playlists. You don't know. So gaming is not just one genre. It might be trap, it might be dubstep, it might be EDM. Some people play gaming to hip hop, even chill hip hop. So it's a whole thing to kind of try to get out of the box and think about, what mood my music fits, what situations. So this might help a lot. It's a bit hard to give advice on without an example. If our artists in the chat have specific examples, I'd be happy to brainstorm with you and like kind of say what I think. But it is hard. Like it's what we're trying to do with our curation is be a bit broader. So for example, chill electronic has, of course, like house, but it has a bit of like, so we have like deep house, lo-fi house. It has a bit of like chill UK garage, for example. It can have some that is more down tempo. Obviously we have a completely different down tempo chill out playlist where you can also have a bit of ambient, as long as it's not too ambient for us, for our curation. So R&B, the R&B playlist has a lot of jazz and soul into it. And there's a lot of like intersection. I sometimes put hip hop songs if it's a verse of hip hop within like predominantly soul song. It's a good fit for the R&B playlist, or vice versa, like on our true hip hop playlist. So you see, like curators also trying to obviously fit the mood, but we're not so strict. We're not like, okay, this should be under some pack vibe, and then it's like okay, how many songs are there? How many good songs are there?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That was again great insight. I think just doing that research is something that we keep coming back to, and I think it's important for artists to try and lean into when they're building their marketing strategy or their playlisting strategy. So I think that's really powerful. I just wanted to pause because you mentioned a good thing there as well is artists can ask questions. So if artists want to, they can submit their questions into the chat. So please do submit your questions into the chat, those artists that are here, and we will come to those probably in about 15 minutes or so. So if you've got questions, stick them in the chat, and Nasco and I will come back to them very, very shortly. So Nasco, we've talked here a little bit about, or mainly about, third-party playlists, right? And we touched on algorithmic playlisting as well, and actually sometimes perhaps third-party playlists can lead to algorithmic support. Can you talk a little bit about how you, within the label of StereoFox, go about pitching for editorial support, a branch of or category of playlists that we haven't talked too much about today?
So first of all, we pitch every single release we have. That's absolutely a must. And I must advise the same thing with artists. Definitely pitch your releases. You have this amazing free tool that's called Spotify for Artists. An important note about this is just have your music ready at least a couple of weeks early, because releasing it for tomorrow is not going to do you much good. You cannot pitch it. You have to have it at least a week in advance in order for you to get into Release Radar, in order for you to trigger some other algorithmic playlists. Don't release every week because it's just not working well for Spotify. It's just becoming oversaturated. So if you release every week, it's just like a little bit too much for the Spotify team to follow. So ideally, I would say anything between 3 to 5 weeks, every 3-5 weeks is perfect. You can do every 2 weeks sometimes, especially if it's an album kind of rollout. But again, that's depending on the strategy. So you cannot get into an editorial, like we've heard some people have, but I don't believe that. You cannot get into an editorial unless you pitch it via Spotify for artists. So that's the first thing. And we have an extensive article on some tips and tricks on stereofox.com. You can go in like how to pitch to Spotify. There is a very, very extensive with some pitch examples, but you have some metadata on the portal. You have to input everything basically. Whatever you can, whatever just put it there. Mood, instruments. If you have lyrics or not, because Spotify works with metadata. They don't care as much about the story, unfortunately, but they work with metadata the most. So the editor goes and has, okay, I need a chill beat song, or I need a up-tempo EDM song there, and he has just those filters, and if your song doesn't have this filter, it's not going to pop up. And another important thing is the pitch text, which is 500 characters, no more. I would say try to be as close to them as you can. So I very often do 499 or 500. Just try to be concise, give context, give some info, give some success if you have so far, and this helps a lot. We had quite a good number of successful pitches. The music should be good, of course, but I think the whole thing of pitching is very important. Unfortunately, what we've noticed in the past year or so, the editorial team has been a lot less people, so it's a lot harder to get into a playlist. We still do, but again, it's such a huge competition. It's 140,000 songs on Spotify each day, and probably half of them don't pitch the songs, which makes things a bit easier. But imagine I don't know how many people were there on Spotify taking care of that, but I wouldn't imagine there more than 100 or whatever. And imagine this volume in your head. So you have to, obviously stick out a bit. You have to be interesting. You have to be better than the others. You have to draw attention to your music. So it's a hard thing to do. Obviously, we don't have 100% success rates. We don't have even 50% success rate sometimes. We release a lot of music as well. So it's a numbers game kind of. You have to try, but you always try it. You have to always try it. And I would say same for other platforms, by the way. You can pitch through Amazon for Music, for example. They have the same pitching tool.
Mm.
Deezer, they have a tool. I'm not sure if it's accessible for artists. It should be, but it's accessible for labels. They have a pitching tool. So those things are important. Just utilize them. And again, I'm sorry to say that, but this falls on the artist, like on the or the labels, obviously. But this is the job of the artist to do the homework and like make sure their music is on the best level possible in order for it to succeed.
It's really interesting because you know what we kind of keep coming back to is like the music, and the music has got to be underpin your artist proposition and your artist campaign, and I think about those truly creative artists who kind of just get it, and they manage to create interesting and great music. And then I was thinking, can that creativity be transitioned to writing a creative Spotify for Artists pitch, or like those sorts of things? I think that's a really hard skill to have everything. You're creative with the music, you're creative with your marketing,
Yeah.
but I think there are people that will give you their time, or there are tools out there that will support you along this journey. So actually, you can be great at creating the music, but then you can leverage a tool to mix your music, leverage one to master your music, leverage one to write your Spotify for Artists pitch. You could use ChatGPT, or like we've just launched a new feature on unheardmusic.ai, actually, which is like a beta product which builds the Spotify for Artists pitch for you. And obviously we would expect you to go in and check that and tweak it and change it.
Exactly. Yeah.
There are tools out there that will help build the foundations, and I think I want to emphasize that, to the community, to say lean on us, lean on the tools, lean on people that are genuinely there to support artists. And you mentioned something, Nasco, as well about the other DSPs, the other streaming platforms, and the ability to pitch to those. So would you change anything with those pitches, or is it simply a copy and paste job into Deezer, copy and paste job into Amazon's pitching tool? Or is there a different approach that you might take with those sorts of streaming platforms?
It's again important to do homework. So basically, on Spotify, if you include a playlist that's you have had success on so far, like it's good to include, okay, I've been added to Spotify's New Music Friday or something similar. Obviously, you cannot include that in Deezer. It's not like they're competitors, obviously, so they cannot really they're not going to be happy if they see, like, they don't care about, like, Deezer doesn't care about Spotify in that terms, your success on Spotify. So definitely tailor them. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't copy paste that. In terms of like the storytelling and everything, I think the formats are pretty much the same. Like for example, on Amazon, you have more characters. I think 1,000. So you can expand the storytelling there. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, just trying to tailor it to the platform. Try to aim for certain editors on there. For example, on like Deezer have some great mood playlists. Deezer actually have great access to the editors as well. So you can see, basically if you go on Deezer, you can see who's the editor of certain playlists. So for example, there's
Mm-hmm.
this guy who creates R&B, or there's this girl who creates electronic playlists. So you can see there, go see there, and you can actually aim for their team, or like on Deezer, you can select the team, the like demographical team, or you can aim for their taste, and you can say, okay, you can put target playlists on Deezer. I'm sorry again if it's not accessible for artists. It should be, I hope, but you can just put target playlists, which helps the editors a lot. But you have done your
Mm-hmm.
homework. So basically, if you release on like a trap song, don't aim it for just any random playlist because it sounds cool, because it's not going to work, and you make their time harder. Basically, your goal ultimately should be to make the editor or the curator's work life easier, because
Yeah.
don't have so much time. They what they want to do is just do as little clicks as possible, make the best possible decision. So if you help them out, if you have done your homework, this shows that you know them, you've done your homework, that you're caring about their time. So
Yeah.
this, and like, you have made an effort, which is very often, you very often raise your success with that, I would say.
Yeah. Amazing. That is, again, great insight. And have you seen the chart metric playlist journey feature?
Yeah,
And
as
so
well.
So to give some context on that, and then I'd love to hear your opinion on it, Nasco, and whether you think it's useful. So for people listening, Chartmetric have this playlist journey feature, and what you can do is you can plug in, your perfect editorial playlist. So if you're an electronic music artist, you could plug in Alter or Mint or whatever it might be, a big editorial. And then Chartmetric will show you the journey typically that songs take to get to that playlist. And you can filter by third-party playlists. And then you could identify, say, 10, 15, 20 third-party playlists that have featured songs that have then appeared in Mint or Alter or the big editorial. And I found it a fascinating tool to understand, okay, if I'm an artist and I want to start to land in those editorials, I need to start by pitching to these third-party playlists. And it gave some great insight on that. That is a tool that people can log into on Chartmetric and use. Nasco, what's your experience being like with that? Like, do you agree with that hypothesis sort of thing, with tracks that end up in big playlists start here?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm not entirely sure it works this way. So that's basically like a reverse engineering thing, which the thing is, we don't know how Spotify curate the playlist. Like we don't know the logic between their decisions. So the problem is that I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not gonna hurt to try. So basically, again, yeah, if you want to get into Mint, it makes most sense to be around the artists that have been on Mint, or similar sound, similar vibe, similar mood, similar size of artists is also good. So, for example, like Fresh Finds, Spotify, Fresh Finds R&B, or Fresh Finds, jazz, or whatever you guys do, is a good place to look for artists that are up and coming. A lot of them are not very big. A lot of them are super small also. So this has been on kind of like a discovery journey for the editors, which we don't know how they do it. They have their backend, etc. But that's a great idea that you mentioned. It's a good start. I'm not entirely sure it works, or maybe it works sometimes, but definitely not. It's not gonna hurt to try. And yeah, finding similar artists and similar playlists to the ones that you're aiming for is the best way to do it, kind of to get your journey moving forward. And Chartmetric is a great tool. Unfortunately, it's not free, so you have to invest a bit. But Chartmetric is a great tool for like similar playlists, it's similar artists, and like a lot of data's on there. But Spotify itself, as I said, is a good place to just look for playlists and like either identify your place or just find their contact, or just find them on Unheard or whatever works for you guys. It's a whole thing. There's no like formula. It's like going into a rabbit hole, sort of. Like we've been doing this for years, and it's like it's always, you never know where it's gonna take you.
That's really interesting. And one question I had actually as well, which just popped into my mind, is, you've talked about the genres in which you work across when it comes to Stereofox, and there's quite a broad spread. Does playlisting over-index in certain genres? Is there more emphasis on the importance of playlisting, for example, in electronic music versus in indie music, or is that not really something you see?
Honestly, really depends on the curators, to be fair. Some people are really strong in certain genres. For example, we are very strong in like chill beats, hip hop, like jazzy, soulful hip hop, R&B, chill electronic. Some other curators might be into EDM, because we don't curate that, at least. Like the least, I mean. We don't curate pop, for example, but they're amazing curators for pop music. There's literally every single genre out there. And that's why I believe that whatever niche music you're making, someone else is probably making it too, unless it's like super experimental. But then again, you have super experimental playlists. So with that being said, I don't think there's a kind of like a leveling. So you don't need to, as an artist, you don't need to say, okay, I'm gonna make pop music because it's popular. It's actually quite hard to make it into the pop world because it's super oversaturated. So why don't you make the music you want to make? And I mean, if you want to make pop, that's fine, of course, but you have to understand that, it's a different scene. So if you want to make like lo-fi house, or if you want to make Amapiano, or if you want to make drill, which is very much connected with your local audience, or you want to make rap in Moroccan, because I've just been talking to this artist. Moroccan rap is a huge thing now, and just do it, and like just pursue your unique audience. And that, I think that's the greatest tip. Everyone's been saying this on for ages, like every webinar, like workshop I've been to from Spotify or whatever, they just say make the music you want to make, and then pave your way. Just become the best at your genre, even if it's like super niche. Just become the person. Kate Nada is a genre. He started at Spotify, at SoundCloud, and look, he's absolutely huge now, and like he just made whatever he wanted to make. So yeah, I hope he's an inspiration.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm a big fan. Okay, and I've got one massive question to end with, but before I ask, I wanted to just again encourage anyone, if they've got any questions. You've got Nasco here, who is the Don when it comes to playlisting. So if you do have any questions about playlisting, they can be specific around your upcoming release or something that you're struggling with. Please do drop them in the chat, and we will come to those in a second. And so Nasco, my big overarching question I'm really interested to get your take on is, what are the trends that you're seeing at the moment when it comes to playlisting? And I guess that could be in terms of people's appetite to want to pitch. It could be in terms of the impact of playlists on an artist's streams. And then what do you think the future holds? Where does playlisting sit in the ecosystem in a year's time, 5 years' time, perhaps 10 years' time?
Yeah, it's a big question. You're right. So the trends for me, what I'm seeing is a lot of people are trying to play the SEO game. So basically just include a lot of keywords and like play with the titles and that sort of thing. There is a way to, if you want to make your own playlist, which we can come back to this. I think this is a really interesting topic. But if you want to be a creator, there's a way to research and like see what's kind of the demand. You can use it like the Google tools for for keywords demand and that sort of thing. But I think people are playing a lot with that, and it's also a very saturated game. So obviously we're more familiar with the genres we are at as well. But what I've found is that I think people are more into kind of like niche stuff as well, because for example, like lo-fi sleep is so oversaturated. You cannot like possibly probably make it right now unless you invest a lot of money, like push it hard with ads and like really to go the extra mile to push this playlist, because it's a niche that's already very it's a specific thing that's very oversaturated. So some people, what they do is like they do lo-fi for sad nights, or like lo-fi for rain or whatever. So these are just a few ideas and a few things I've noticed. Also, another thing is that which is for people like us, which are human curators. I think people are slightly fed up with the algorithmic stuff with Spotify, because it doesn't work well for them. So they don't really relate to the curation and like the choices that Spotify makes for them. So they're looking for curators that really vibe with them, that they really fit their taste. So I think what's going to happen in the next few years is probably this to become bigger, stronger. So a lot of playlists, for example, are going to be very solid. Like we have this playlist which is for like summer lo-fi, like bossa nova beats. This kind of vibe, it's been growing amazingly by itself, absolutely organic, because there's demand for it, and there's just people like the curation, and I see people coming back to it because you can see the stats. We have our own releases in there, so we can see what's going on. So it has this people coming back. People like the curation. It's growing constantly by itself, and this shows that people are really looking for such type of content. So if you can identify that for your music or for your curation, you can be an early adopter, and something good can happen for your either music or playlist. But yeah, I think people are, there's obviously the two sides of the coin, where a lot of people are gonna like this, just go click and listen on Spotify, and like whatever plays there it's so much easier now. It's just like you really don't have to think. They just literally, when you open your phone, you can literally just hit one button and whole day you can have music, which is fairly interesting and different and can change your mood. They implement so many things, but I think there's the more old school people who actually rely on human behavior to decide on what matches a mood or a song. So I think there's going to be a fine balance between those two. There's definitely going to be the two sides in the next few years. And I mean, hope the human creation stays, because that's what we do and that's what we love to do. But yeah, honestly, it's a tough game. It's just everyone wants to make playlists, everyone wants to have them, very successful. But I think the key thing is to be relatable to certain people. And again, we're coming back to the niche thing where you better be really good at one niche and have very solid audience that even like 50 people stream on 100 times your playlist, rather than having just one person listen once to one song and drops, because then you're not going to turn them into fans, which is ultimately the goal, right?
Yeah. So humans versus AI then, basically. No, I'm just...
Yeah. Yeah, we come to this question, but I mean, I think the right path is honestly just both. As you said, just have your brain, use the resources, but have your brain at the same time, and just like tweak it. I think that's the best thing to do.
Amazing. Thanks, Haskell. We've got a few questions here. I'm going to start with a question from Josh. Josh said, how would you start a playlist and grow it if you had to start again today? I think you touched on that a little bit in terms of finding the genres that are topical, and popular, and where there's opportunity. Is there anything else you would add to that for Josh?
Yeah, like just find a playlist that you want to develop. Add 50 people on there and message them and say, okay, here's the playlist. I added you there. Give it a like, give it a share if you want, if you like the curation, that sort of thing. This is a very easy thing. And a lot of people, especially if you add smaller artists, obviously you're not going to message Rihanna to, she doesn't care, unfortunately. But if you add smaller artists, and especially people are very appreciative, and it's not going to hurt to obviously, just give it a share. And it's very important. Good curation is very important. Again, if you start adding like shitty music or just like the most random things, or if you create a trendy playlist but you're adding your own song there, it has nothing to do with it, it's just not going to work. So that's what I would advise. Unfortunately, there is no formula. Sometimes things work out for the good, but sometimes just things don't work out, and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe sometimes you can pick up. You can try tweaking the keywords, the description. It's important. Investing some money in ads definitely helps, but you have to have like interesting approach towards like creative and like the visuals and like the whole copy, in order to approach this, because people are also tired of just seeing a lot of things, so you have to catch their attention, which I'm sure you probably are touching on this on like social media content stuff. You have to just be very interesting to listeners or like the audience. So yeah, that's a few things.
Amazing. Thanks, Haskell. And then the second question from Aidan, how do you find the right playlist where listeners will actually play your music no matter how big or small the listeners will be? So I think we touched on a few of these things, didn't we, in terms of, there is a bit of research involved to find the right playlist. You can use the discovered on section as well to see that those playlists are driving consumption or streams. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Lasco?
Yeah, just wanted to mention that you would be amazed sometimes how many playlists with 2K followers actually generate amazing amount of streams. There's just obviously demand for this type of sound. So if you find such playlists, it's very, very often you can find the curator on a platform or even on Instagram, and you can just message them, hey, I found this song, and basically, if you like it, feel free to add it. And people with 2K followers, if they might be just random people who like this music, and very often they're gonna add it. And here's a good trick to do. But yeah, another thing which we didn't mention, but I think is really important in order to pitch the playlist, make sure you listen to the playlist. Make sure your music matches. That's very important. We have been receiving, for example, a lot of Afrobeat music for our playlist, which is good music, but it just has nothing to do with our genre. And like it's still R&B, but it's not in a way. So like do your homework again, like coming back to that. So I think those tips and tricks that we shared with like identifying bot or like fake playlists or like random playlists that are not going to do, your best bet is to aim for like really good match or even like small playlists that have just good listenership. And you can find that out if it's the case by the discovered on section, if it appears on top. But even for a small artist, even 100 streams are sometimes making like a long way because it's just the start of the career. And it's very important, guys, I think, to realize it's not natural for you for your first song to go into 1 million streams. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to do. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen, because it's a long journey. We've had many artists with such cases, and their first songs are just like doing a few thousand K, next one is 50K. Now we're having artists with a few 100,000 or 1 million. It's just a journey. That's an important thing.
I think that's a great way to end, perhaps, Nasco, because I think it is all about a journey. It's all a process. And I think it's challenging for artists because they see these viral events where artists go from 0 to 1 million, overnight. But actually, they're not going from 0 to 1 million. Often they have spent time building that audience, and then it just so happens that they find something that triggers the algorithms, and they do have that success. But
yeah.
I think that those are rare cases, and actually for a lot of artists, it's about building momentum over time, and then they'll get there. But it's a process. It's similar to your career. As you don't start out being a managing director or a marketing director or whatever, or a label manager. You work your way there, and it's the same thing in music. Well, Nasco, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned so much about playlisting. That was great. So thank you. And a couple of things to mention is this masterclass will appear on YouTube, and we will share an email with a link to that video with everyone who has joined today. There is also a 50% discount code off your pro membership, which we will share with you in the email, but it's Masterclass50 if you want to use that. So Nasco, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope this is useful. Looking forward to listening to your music. We're on the Herd, so you can submit to us if you want. Again, do your homework. We don't want you guys to spend money on music that's just irrelevant, but we really, really, really try to support everyone we can. Honestly, like that's why we started StereoFox, and that's our goal. So whoever we can help, that would be the best feeling in the world. Thanks, Alex. You're doing a great thing with Unheard, and hope I'm looking forward to the next masterclass. And I want to learn a lot as well.
Thanks, Nasco. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon.